I exposed my wife's secret corporate betrayal before a $10 million merger, and executed revenge that saved my empire and reclaimed my life forever. The meeting room fell silent as I closed my laptop. $10 million. That was the contract waiting for my signature. A partnership that would merge my tech startup with her corporate law firm. We'd be the power couple of the industry. I'd crafted the perfect pitch, secured the investors, and mapped our expansion for the next 5 years. Everything was aligned perfectly, or so I thought. I returned home that night to find her sitting at our dining table, face illuminated by her laptop screen. No kiss, no greeting, just the click of her perfectly manicured nails against the keyboard. When she finally acknowledged my presence, the words stabbed through the room. I need time to see if we're on the same page. Her timing couldn't have been more suspicious, one day before signing the contracts that would legally bind our professional lives together. 5 years of marriage, 3 years building our respective businesses with the explicit goal of merging them, and suddenly, she needed time. I didn't react immediately. Instead, I poured myself a whiskey and observed her body language, the subtle shift in her posture, the way she avoided eye contact, the nervous tap of her foot against the hardwood floor. Something wasn't right. The contracts are ready for tomorrow, I said calmly. The investors are flying in specifically for this signing. I know, she replied, her voice practiced and controlled, but I'm having second thoughts about the terms. Maybe we should postpone, just for a month or two. Rather than arguing, I simply nodded and walked toward her home office. Her password hadn't changed in months, a rookie mistake for someone so calculating. Within minutes, I was scrolling through her emails. That's when I found it. Communications with Revoltech, our biggest competitor, dating back 3 months. Not just casual exchanges, but detailed discussions about my proprietary technology, valuation reports, and internal documents that only she had access to. My heart raced, but my mind remained cold and focused. The final email had been sent just hours ago. He suspects nothing. Once the merger is complete, we'll have full legal access to his patents. The transfer can begin immediately after the signing. Our offer stands. Triple what he's paying you. I shut down her computer exactly as I found it and returned to the living room, where she was now pretending to review legal briefs. I didn't confront her. Instead, I calmly told her I respected her need for time and would arrange to postpone tomorrow's meeting. The relief that flooded her face confirmed everything. That night, while she slept, I made 3 critical phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, instructing him to draw up completely revised contracts by morning. The second was to my chief security officer, requesting a complete digital sweep of our systems and access restrictions for select intellectual properties. The third was to an investor I'd been cultivating as a backup, one with deeper pockets and a personal vendetta against Revoltech. By dawn, I had a new plan. She wanted to see if we were on the same page. I'd already burned that book. Now I was writing a completely different story. One where she'd learn exactly what happens when you try to betray a man who built something from nothing. I kissed her goodbye that morning with a smile that never reached my eyes. She believed she had me exactly where she wanted me. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I maintained perfect composure while executing my counterattack. My revised strategy required absolute secrecy and precision timing. While she believed I was postponing the meeting, I was actually advancing it by 2 hours. The new investor was already on board with double the initial investment and triple the protections for my intellectual property. I needed more evidence of her betrayal. After she left for her morning workout routine, I installed monitoring software on her home network. Within hours, I had access to every communication she'd made in the last 6 months. The depth of her deception was staggering. Not only was she planning to steal my technology through legal loopholes in our merger, but she was sleeping with Revoltech's CEO. Their messages made my stomach turn. Not from jealousy, but from the utter disrespect shown in their exchanges. "He's completely clueless," she wrote. "So focused on his precious algorithms that he doesn't even notice when I'm taking phone calls in the other room." The CEO's response came minutes later. "Keep him distracted. Once we acquire those patents, we'll dominate the market. And don't worry about after. I've got a corner office waiting for you with a much better view than he could ever provide." They even had a pet name for their scheme, Operation Page Turner. The irony wasn't lost on me. I forwarded all evidence to my private server and continued preparing. My lawyer called with confirmation that the new contracts were ready, airtight documents that would protect my intellectual property while appearing identical to the originals. At first glance, the differences were buried in subclauses that only became relevant if merger assets were transferred to third parties. If she attempted to move my technology to Revoltech, she'd trigger clauses that would immediately revert all ownership to me, along with substantial financial penalties. That afternoon, she called to check if I had postponed the meeting. I confirmed that I had, lying as smoothly as she did. "I understand you need time," I said. The investors were disappointed, but I told them it was just a temporary delay. "You're being so understanding," she replied, relief evident in her voice. "I promise this will be better for both of us in the long run." "I'm sure it will," I answered, watching my security team complete the digital lockdown of our systems. That evening, I received a notification that she was meeting the Revoltech CEO at an upscale hotel downtown. Perfect timing. While she thought she was advancing her betrayal, I accessed her business laptop and discovered detailed plans for how they would exploit our merger. They had already drafted press releases announcing Revoltech's acquisition of my core technology, dated just 2 weeks after our planned contract signing. As midnight approached, my phone rang. It was her. "The meeting with the investors is still canceled for tomorrow, right?" she asked. Background noise suggested she was still at the hotel. "Everything's going according to plan," I responded, truthfully, though not in the way she interpreted. After hanging up, I received confirmation that my new investor had arrived in town early. The rescheduled signing was set for 9 a.m., 3 hours before she thought our postponed meeting would have taken place. I slept soundly that night, despite her empty side of the bed. In the morning, I dressed in my sharpest suit and left before she returned home. Today wasn't about saving a relationship or confronting a cheater. This was about respecting myself enough to not only walk away from betrayal, but to ensure the betrayer learned exactly who they had underestimated. The boardroom was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a mahogany table that gleamed under recessed lighting, and a row of leather chairs filled with the most influential investors in the tech sector. At exactly 9 a.m., my new investor walked in, a silver-haired veteran of the industry who had lost millions to Revoltech in a previous hostile takeover. The irony of his involvement would not be lost on her when she discovered it. I checked my watch, knowing she was likely just waking up at the hotel. My phone buzzed with a message from her. "Meeting still at noon, right? Going to the spa this morning to clear my head." I didn't respond. Instead, I stood to address the room. "Thank you all for accommodating the schedule change. Before we begin, I'd like to address some recent developments that affect our partnership structure. My lawyer distributed the new contracts while I launched a presentation on the wall screen. What you're seeing is evidence of corporate espionage targeting our proprietary algorithms. Unfortunately, the source of this breach comes from within." The room fell silent as I methodically displayed screenshots of her communications with Revoltech, the planned asset transfer timeline, and financial transactions linking her to our competitor. I maintained perfect composure, presenting the evidence like I would any business analysis, factual, unemotional, and devastatingly thorough. As you can see, the merger as originally structured would have resulted in the effective theft of technology valued at approximately $50 million. The revised contracts in front of you contain specific protections against this scenario. The investors were stunned but impressed. My new primary backer spoke up. "I've seen Revoltech's tactics before. Their approach is always the same. Find someone on the inside, exploit personal relationships, then strip the company for parts. I'm committed to tripling the initial investment to ensure this technology remains protected." As the meeting progressed, I received multiple text messages from her, each growing increasingly frantic as she couldn't reach any of the investors or lawyers who weren't responding to her calls. By 11:30 a.m., when all signatures were in place and the deal was done, the boardroom door flew open. She stood there in business attire hastily assembled, hair still damp from the hotel shower. The shock on her face when she saw the gathering, already concluded without her, was momentarily satisfying, but I wasn't there for petty emotional victories. "What's happening?" she stammered, attempting to regain composure. "The meeting isn't scheduled until noon." I remained seated, gesturing to the vacant chair beside me. "Please join us." We were just finalizing the new partnership structure. As she took her seat, I slid a folder toward her. "These documents outline the changes to our arrangement. You'll note that your firm has been removed entirely from the merger." She flipped through the pages, color draining from her face. "You can't do this. We had an agreement." "We had a draft agreement," I corrected, "which required signatures. signatures that have now been applied to a completely different set of documents. Documents that specifically exclude parties with connections to Revoltech. Her eyes flashed to the screen where her own messages to Revoltech were still displayed. "This is a misunderstanding," she began. I cut her off by pressing play on an audio recording, her voice clearly stating their plan to extract my technology and transfer it to Revoltech within 2 weeks of signing. "Is this also a misunderstanding?" I asked calmly. The investors watched the exchange with uncomfortable fascination. She attempted one last desperate play. "This is our personal relationship bleeding into business. We can resolve this privately." I stood, buttoning my suit jacket. "There is nothing personal about corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty. Your firm's involvement has been terminated, the investor funds have been secured, and as of 20 minutes ago, Revoltech is facing a federal investigation for attempted intellectual property theft." She looked around the room, searching for sympathetic faces and finding none. "You've made a serious mistake," she threatened. I leaned forward slightly, maintaining perfect eye contact. "No. The mistake was thinking I would sign anything without reading between the lines. The mistake was believing I was just a naive tech developer who wouldn't notice when millions of dollars worth of intellectual property was being targeted. The mistake," I paused, "was yours." As she stormed out, my new investor extended his hand. That was impressive containment of what could have been a devastating breach. "Your technology is now secured with triple the initial capital. I'd say this turned out rather well." I accepted his handshake with a controlled smile. The battle wasn't over. It had merely shifted to a different battlefield where I held every advantage. In business, as in life, it's not about avoiding betrayal. It's about ensuring that whoever attempts to cross you regrets it completely. The aftermath was immediate and calculated. By the time I returned to my office, my security team had already locked her out of all systems. Her firm's access to our databases was terminated, and all shared assets were quarantined. She called 17 times in the first hour. I didn't answer once. Instead, I focused on the next phase. This wasn't just about protecting my business. It was about ensuring she faced the full consequences of her actions. Her betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a calculated attempt to destroy everything I had built. My response would be equally calculated. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Revoltech CEO here. We should talk. This situation can still be salvaged in a way that benefits us both." I forwarded the message directly to my legal team without responding. Their desperation was telling. They realized too late that I wasn't the easy target they had assumed. The first legal notice arrived at her office by mid-afternoon, a cease and desist regarding any use of intellectual property she might have already extracted. The second was a formal notification to the Bar Association regarding breach of attorney-client privilege. The third was the most devastating documentation of the federal investigation into corporate espionage that now implicated both her and Revoltech's leadership. At 4 p.m., she appeared at my office building, demanding to see me. Security camera footage showed her being calmly but firmly escorted back to the street, her perfect hair disheveled, her designer outfit wrinkled from frantic movements. "Sir, she's in the lobby again," my head of security informed me. "She's threatening to make a scene if you don't speak with her." "Let her," I replied. "The cameras will capture everything. It'll make excellent evidence for the restraining order." 20 minutes later, my lawyer called to inform me that she had indeed made a scene. Crying, shouting, claiming I had misunderstood the situation. The performance had been recorded from multiple angles. Perfect. That evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang again. It was her. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "You have to let me explain. What you saw wasn't the whole story." I think the audio recordings, emails, and text messages told quite a comprehensive story, I replied calmly, continuing toward my car. "It was just business strategy," she countered, her tone shifting to defensive anger. "You would have done the same in my position. Don't pretend you're above aggressive tactics." "Aggressive tactics?" I repeated, letting a cold laugh escape. "Is that what you call conspiring to steal proprietary technology through a fraudulent merger? Is that what you call sleeping with a competitor to facilitate corporate theft?" Her breathing hitched on the other end of the line. "Let me be clear," I continued. "This isn't about aggressive tactics or business strategy. It's about betrayal, criminality, and consequences. The difference between us isn't that I'm above aggressive tactics. The difference is that I don't need to resort to theft and deception to win." "You're making a powerful enemy," she warned, her voice hardening. Revoltech has resources you can't imagine. And yet they needed to steal my technology rather than develop their own, I countered. That tells me everything about their resources and capabilities. I ended the call and blocked her number. The next morning, news of the federal investigation hit the business press. Revoltech's stock dropped 15% in the first hour of trading. By noon, rumors circulated that their board was calling an emergency meeting. By close of business, 3 of their executive team had been placed on administrative leave, including their CEO. My new investor called to congratulate me on the swift execution. "You've turned what could have been a company-ending disaster into an opportunity," he said. "Revoltech is on the defensive. Your technology is secured, with greater funding than before, and you've established yourself as someone who cannot be manipulated or underestimated." I accepted his praise with composed gratitude, but my focus was already shifting forward. In the tech world, innovation never stops for personal drama. While she was watching her professional reputation implode, I was already planning our next product launch. The message was clear to everyone in our industry: cross me and you don't simply lose a deal, you lose everything. The following weeks unfolded with mechanical precision. My legal team filed for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences and breach of fiduciary duty. The prenuptial agreement I'd insisted on signing before our marriage provided clear protection for my business assets, a fact her lawyers were now desperately trying to challenge. Their efforts were futile. I had been meticulous from the beginning. I moved into a penthouse downtown, closer to company headquarters. The space was minimalist, functional, and untainted by memories of betrayal. When my assistant asked if I wanted to retrieve personal belongings from our former home, I simply replied, "Replace everything." The past was a distraction I couldn't afford. My company thrived under the new investment structure. The publicity surrounding Revoltech's attempted corporate espionage actually elevated our market position. Potential clients who had been undecided now saw us as the industry's leading innovator, the company worth stealing from. Our valuation doubled within a month. Then came the inevitable final confrontation. My security team alerted me that she was in the building lobby demanding access. This time, rather than having her removed, I instructed them to escort her to my office. It was time to end this chapter definitively. She entered wearing an outfit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, clearly an attempt to project power she no longer possessed. Her makeup was flawless but couldn't hide the strain around her eyes. She had lost weight, and not in the intentional way. "You've gone too far," she began, slamming a legal document on my desk. "Your lawyers are trying to invoke the infidelity clause in our prenup. You're attempting to leave me with nothing." I didn't stand or offer her a seat. My response was measured. "The infidelity clause was your idea, if you recall. Something about wanting mutual accountability. Ironic, considering how things turned out." "This isn't about our marriage," she insisted. "This is about business. You're deliberately destroying my professional reputation. My firm is losing clients. I can't even get meetings with companies I've worked with for years." "Actions have consequences," I replied. "When you conspired to steal intellectual property valued at millions, did you consider the professional consequences? When you transmitted confidential information to a competitor, did you weigh the legal ramifications?" "Made a mistake," she admitted, changing tactics. Her voice softened as she took the seat across from me without invitation. "We built our careers together. 5 years of marriage. Doesn't that count for anything? We could still salvage something from this situation." I studied her face, the calculated vulnerability in her expression, the practiced tilt of her head. Even now she was performing, searching for any leverage to manipulate the outcome. "You're right about one thing," I said. "We did build our careers together, which is why you knew exactly how devastating your betrayal would be. You understood precisely what you were attempting to destroy." "I never wanted to destroy you," she countered. "It was just business." At this, I finally stood. "Then consider this just business as well. You attempted a hostile takeover of my life's work." I responded with a more effective strategy. "The market has decided which approach was superior." She switched tactics again, eyes filling with tears that I recognized as entirely strategic. "What about us? What we had was real before all this." "What we had was a partnership built on trust," I corrected. "You violated that trust completely. Now you're experiencing the natural consequences." Her facade cracked momentarily, raw anger flashing across her features. "You think you've won, don't you? This isn't over. You have no idea what I'm capable of when I have nothing left to lose. I pressed a button on my desk phone. Actually, I'm quite familiar with your capabilities. That's why I recorded this entire conversation. Your threat will make an interesting addition to our ongoing legal proceedings. The color drained from her face as my security team entered. Miss Dames will be leaving now, I instructed them. Please ensure she exits the building. As she was escorted out, she turned for one last attempt. You'll regret this. Everyone has vulnerabilities. I remained seated, my expression unchanged. The difference is, I know mine. You just exposed all of yours. After she left, my lawyer called to inform me that Revoltech's board had ousted their CEO following the scandal. The company was in damage control mode, their stock continuing to fall. Meanwhile, our new product launch was scheduled for next month with unprecedented pre-orders. That evening, I stood at my penthouse window watching the city lights. There was no satisfaction in destroying her, only the cold certainty that I had protected what was mine. Some would call it revenge, but I recognized it for what it truly was: justice, delivered with precision by a man who refused to be a victim. 1 year later, I stood at the podium accepting the Innovation Leadership Award at the annual Tech Industry Summit. The room was filled with the elite of our sector, investors, developers, and executives who had watched my company's meteoric rise over the past 12 months. Our valuation had quadrupled since the failed merger attempt. The technology she had tried to steal was now revolutionizing the industry, with our patents securing market dominance for years to come. My speech was brief and focused on innovation rather than past conflicts. I had long since moved beyond the need for public vindication. Success was vindication enough. As I concluded my remarks to enthusiastic applause, I scanned the audience out of habit. That's when I saw her, seated near the back, no longer in the very important person section where she once belonged. Her firm had survived but was diminished, handling minor cases far removed from the high-stakes corporate law she had practiced before. The divorce had been finalized months ago with the prenuptial agreement upheld completely. According to industry whispers, she was attempting to rebuild her reputation after being blacklisted by most major tech companies. After the ceremony, I worked the room with potential partners, discussing expansion possibilities and new technology applications. I felt her watching from across the room but paid no attention. The past was irrelevant to my current trajectory. As the evening wound down, she finally approached. She looked expensive but tired, designer clothes covering the wear of someone fighting to maintain appearances while their reality crumbled. "Congratulations on the award," she said, voice carefully neutral. "Your company's growth has been impressive." I acknowledged her with a measured nod. "Thank you. I've been following your success," she continued. "The implementation of the neural interface algorithms was particularly brilliant. That was always your specialty, seeing connections others missed." I remained silent, letting her navigate the awkward tension she had created by approaching me. "I've had a lot of time to reflect on what happened," she said, lowering her voice. "I made a catastrophic miscalculation, not just professionally, but personally." "A miscalculation," I repeated, the word hanging between us like a verdict, an interesting way to describe attempted theft of intellectual property and breach of trust. She flinched slightly but pressed on. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm suggesting there might be a path forward, professionally speaking. My firm has connections that could be valuable for your expansion into European markets. We're both rational business people. Perhaps it's time to see if we're on the same page again." The audacity was almost admirable. After everything, she was attempting to leverage what remained of her professional assets to re-establish a connection. Her final words, an intentional echo of the phrase that had initiated our conflict, revealed the level of calculation still driving her actions. I studied her for a moment, noting the desperation beneath her composed exterior. Then I set my empty glass on a passing server's tray and straightened my cufflinks. "You once asked for time to see if we were on the same page," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I didn't need time. I burned that book entirely and wrote a completely new one. It's become a bestseller, as you can see. Unfortunately for you, there's no character that matches your description in the revised edition." The impact of my words was visible, a slight widening of her eyes, a barely perceptible step backward. Before she could respond, I continued. "Success isn't just about building something valuable. It's about recognizing what and who is not worth your investment. You were a chapter I needed to close to write something better. I nodded to a colleague waiting nearby, signaling the end of our conversation. As I turned to leave, I added a final thought. I wish you luck rebuilding your career. Just do it in an industry where our paths won't cross. Walking away, I felt nothing but clarity. There was no lingering anger or resentment. Those emotions required an investment of energy I was no longer willing to make. The company continued to thrive. My life had evolved in ways I couldn't have anticipated before our split. In forcing me to start over, she had inadvertently pushed me to create something far more valuable than what we might have built together. Later that night, as news coverage of the awards ceremony highlighted my company's transformative impact on the industry, I reflected on the complete arc of events. She had asked for time to see if we were on the same page, never realizing that the book itself was fundamentally flawed. By burning it entirely and starting fresh, I had written a story of success that exceeded all expectations, one where betrayal became the catalyst for unprecedented achievement. Some might call it revenge. I recognized it as something far more powerful, reinvention on my own uncompromising terms. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. 2 years have passed since that night I closed the last page on her. Tonight, standing on the balcony of the new headquarters that bears only my name in brushed steel across the facade, I finally allow myself to feel what I refused to feel then. There is no triumph in my chest, only a vast, quiet emptiness where anger used to live. I thought revenge would taste like fire. Instead, it tasted like ash, and the wind carried it away long ago. I did what I had to do, not because I hated her, but because I finally loved myself enough to stop accepting crumbs disguised as a feast. That was the real victory, though no one will ever put it on a magazine cover. Sometimes, in the rare silences between board meetings and product launches, I catch myself wondering if she ever truly loved me, or if I was always just the brilliant fool with the golden algorithm. The question used to keep me awake. Now it simply drifts by like a cloud, no longer heavy enough to cast a shadow. I am not proud of the coldness I mastered. I am not ashamed of it either. It was armor when I had nothing else, and it served its purpose. Today I can take it off. I forgive her not for her sake, but because carrying unforgiveness is like dragging a corpse through every new room I enter. I buried it the day I realized my life had become bigger than the wound she left. The city lights below keep blinking, alive and indifferent. I smile, small, private, genuine, because I am still here, still building, still choosing every single day to turn pain into progress instead of poison. I am not the man she tried to steal from anymore. I am the man who refused to be stolen, and that, at last, feels like peace.